It's our first edition of the program Frontier Opening Bell this week. Thank you for joining us on the show. I'm Temple Ashaju. We've got Ali Kansachu joining us from Read Frontiers in Nairobi, Kenya. Thank you for coming in this morning. And Bosun Amofai, Executive Editor at Frontier Africa Reports. Thank you, gentlemen, for being on the show this morning. Let's look at the market indices. They closed quite mixed last week for the weekly analysis. Nigeria was down 1.20% week to date. The BRVM Stock Exchange was positive marginally 0.01% on Friday. Egypt was down 2.44% on a weekly basis, and you've got the Nairobi Stock Exchange dipping by 1.49%, while the South African markets, the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, inched up some 0.78% on Friday. Now let's look at the Eastern African headlines, where the Central Bank of Kenya raises some 30.2 billion shillings via the weekly treasury bills issue. Was oversubscribed by some 140.9%. Kenya, again, Stanbic IBTC in Kenya or Stanbic Bank in Kenya, profits dipped by 19% to 5.2 billion shillings in 2020. And of course, SS Liberty Holdings is looking to raise stake in Kenya's subsidiary by 16%. Cooperative Bank of Oromia has got its profit after tax jumping by some 79.6%, 1.18 billion birr, and that's in Ethiopia. Got Merge approving the new listing of some 303,000 shares of 2 Forest Plaza, the last limited. Ali, what do you make of these headlines?
Yes, thank you. So let me first of all start with the T-bills. This broke a sequence of undersubscription. This was a significant oversubscription in this last auction, which was quite interesting, I think. Shows that there is liquidity in the system. The central bank is now set to issue about 50 billion of longer-term bonds. I think they got confidence from the oversubscription that we saw in the T-bill market. Of course, Moody's announced over the weekend a one-notch downgrade of Kenya, but I think for the time being, that was largely priced in. And what we have is a situation with a muted recovery at the moment, and therefore banks quite liquid, and hence this oversubscription. Stanbic was the first bank, tier 1 bank, to release its earnings. Profit down 19%, which, given the context, frankly, was, I thought, an extremely strong performance. NPL ratio went up to just over 15%, but I suspect that is the high for this particular cycle, and therefore we should start to see an improvement in that number, which will help earnings this year. But overall, I couldn't argue with Stanbic's earnings. I thought they were resilient and muscular in what was a very tough economy last year. SA's Liberty Holdings increasing their stake in Liberty Kenya. This follows on from news of Nation Media buying back 10% of their shares. And what I think we have is some egregious share prices of the Nairobi Securities Exchange, and therefore that's encouraging folks to increase their holdings. Liberty, the Nation Media Group are two of them. And I think it sort of underpins the stock exchange at admittedly lower levels, but it's a very positive signal that we're receiving. Coop Bank of Oromia, that's a very strong performance in a time of extraordinary uncertainty and volatility in that part of Ethiopia. So that's a very impressive performance, and that's my takeaway. And then finally, Merge, which is the stock exchange in the Seychelles, continues to innovate, continues to put stuff through the pipeline. And, you know, they might be very small, but they are extremely innovative and worth keeping an eye on as one of the ahead of the curve stock exchanges on the continent.
Thank you very much, Ali, for those analyses. Bosin, you've got I really believe that you also want to have to go with the T-bills issue in Kenya, because as you know, the up-to-date analysis of the markets, the stock market shows a dip of 1.4% for the week. Could that have been as a result of some portfolio rebalancing, a shift from equities to the debt capital market? Thank you. The mic
For last week, the Nairobi Securities Exchange was down for most part of last week.
Yeah.
140% overbought of treasury bills mean folks are looking for where yields are strong and where they can lock in some gains. So this interplay of equities versus debt market, like a ping pong, you play table tennis. It's always happened with fund managers trying to look for where they can quickly lock in into a 90-day short-dated medium-term paper or long-term paper and see how they can harvest a bit more. Remember, Kenya's fiscal balance is not seriously balanced, as it were. A different story from Nigeria, by the way. But again, I wasn't particularly happy last week that the equities in Nairobi was not as strong as I thought it would be. But the story around the Cooperative Bank of Oromia, as Ali says, they have the Cooperative Bank of Kenya. They've got a family bank as well. These banks that have the people at the bottom of the pyramid as their base will continue to remain resilient, because this is the bank of the people, for the people, and by the people. Remember, Temple, we used to have a People's Bank of Nigeria back about 20, nearly 30 years ago, under the military administration. And if that bank today had gone to the stock market as a PLC, I'm sure that bank would have been very resilient, because that was a bank that for the market women, for the market men, for everybody on the street. Maybe we just bring it back one of these days.
Well, perhaps as a microfinance bank. Let's move on now to the Western headlines. Western African headlines. We've got Ghana signing of a tariff-free trade access with the UK, relating to the economic partnership agreements that they used to have with Europe. Afrexim Bank's chief, as Oramah, Professor Benedict Oramah, is in Ghana to update on AfCFTA payment pilot system. We've got the Central Bank of Nigeria announcing a rebate of ₦5 for $1 via the IMTO starting today through to May the 8th, 2020. Procter & Gamble Colorist Cosmetics signed some $35 million deal to produce Oral-B in Nigeria. AfDB, the Securities and Exchange Commission of Nigeria, both signed $400 funding agreement to basically enhance the capital market in Nigeria. Congo is to launch a bond loan of 100 billion CFA, a 5-year program at 6.25% yield. Before I get the thoughts of Boson on this, let me get your thoughts, Ali, especially on the Afrexim Bank chief that is in Ghana to speak to the AfCFTA. I believe it's about exploration of some kind of partnership to see how that will happen. What do you expect from this tie, this relationship, or marriage, as Boson usually will put it?
Well, I think, the Afrexim Bank have got to play a key role in the implementation of the African Free Trade Agreement. In many respects, they will be the preeminent implementation agent. And I think what you're seeing is them vested of that responsibility and looking at ways in order to achieve that. And Ghana, lots of interesting developments there. You've got the whole cocoa board. You've got an opportunity of Afrexim Bank to play a big role in that space. So I think this is just to do with the implementation aspect. It's great on the ticket, the African Free Trade Agreement, but the devil is going to be in the detail of the execution, Temple. And I think Afrexim Bank has got a big role to play in that.
Thanks a great deal, Ali, for that. Bosin, let's hear your thoughts on these West African headlines.
Yes, I think part of, let me take it up from where Ali just finished about the implementation of the AfCFTA, and that's actually the reason why Afrexim Bank President Oramah was in Ghana specifically, even though it was Ghana's 64th independence over the weekend, but he actually went to see, he touched on the Nana Akufo-Addo. Of course, you need to go to the host country's presidents to pay homage to him and say hello, because Ghana is warehousing the AfCFTA headquarters. So it makes sense to touch base with President Nana Akufo-Addo, His Excellency. Then went on to see Wamkele Mene about the clearing and payment system. Remember, West Africa is the pilot phase for this clearing and settlement of a backbone for the AfCFTA trade. In other words, Afrexim and others are looking to how we can intertrade in Africa without going through the US dollar because of the exchange risk, because of the costs, and a whole lot of that. So the pilot phase, which is to be launched at the end of this month, Oramah of Afrexim actually went there to find out where's the state of things, really. Are we ready to go by the end of March? That was the particular reason they issued a press statement on Saturday on that as well. They went to check up with the Secretariat of AfCFTA. Remember, the West African Monetary Institute is also part of that pilot phase, and we interviewed the former immediate past Director General of the WAMI recently, and said the deadline is set for the end of this month. So 3 months into the launch of the AfCFTA, they're looking at perhaps on the 1st of April, formal trade could happen in which you can use a country's currency rather than using the dollar as the currency trade. I think that is one good news. Now, speaking to the Ghana UK trade, and I think this is just a little bit at the opposite of the one for Kenya, in which I have seen a whole lot on social media. The Kenyans seem to be unhappy with the Uhuru's administration about the deal that allows the UK to export massively free to Kenya, where they can't see the corresponding outflow of Kenya goods also into the UK. I'm sure Ali would knows a whole lot more about that. But what the Ghanaians have done, cleverly done, is to say that they will have massive outflow of exports to Britain, and they will be able to do that free of tariff and what have you. So it's a whole lot of, but I think these two countries are clever between Kenya and Ghana. Nigeria is one of the largest countries, which was a former colonial outpost for Britain, and I haven't heard anything about Nigeria doing anything with Kenya, even whether it is the Ghana style or the Kenyan style. Ali.
Yeah, it's probably in the works and something that will be revealed much later, because out of Ghana too, just as we're discussing it now, nobody knew about it. No one knew it actually hits the news wires as it has now this week. Okay, so let's move on to the Southern African market and look at the rating that the Moody's has now given to Mauritius. They've cut down the rating of that country to Baa2 from Baa1 and held negative outlook for this particular country. All of this downgrade is hinged on the fiscal and economic strength at the moment, as the coronavirus pandemic has hit the tourism sector, which is responsible for export earnings and employment in that space. Liberty Holdings has also released its results. A headline loss of 1.54 billion rands for 2020 calendar year is what's been reported, compared to a profit of 3.25 billion rands in the preceding the base year. RMB Holdings expects earnings for half year ended December 2020 lower by 110%. And First Rand Namibia estimates its loss around 185 million Namibian dollars in half year to December 2020 calendar year. That's a 6-month period that they're looking at there. Ali, we've got quite a number of corporate stories there, but then let's look at the sovereign that we have, and that's the Moody's reactions to or ratings on Mauritius, a major country which is a heavy on tourism.
Look, I mean, you know, we obviously, all of us were expecting a round of ratings downgrades. Last year was very tough for the fiscal situation for many African countries. Therefore, this was predicted and predictable. And then specifically with Mauritius, you have this extraordinary tourism dependency. You know, we have until now not seen a strong tourism rebound unfold. A lot of people are betting on the vaccine for that to start happening. I essentially think we're not going to see a recovery in the tourism sector until the fourth quarter at the earliest. So look, you know, I don't think this came out of left field. I think everyone was aware that this was a risk. And I think Moody's are just bowing to the inevitable. So, but you know, Mauritius, notwithstanding their comments about weak fiscal and economic strength, you know, it is a fairly well-run economy with a bit of bench strength in terms of the policy-making capacity. Liberty Holdings, we were just talking about them, upshifting their position in Liberty Kenya. Obviously, it's been a tough year for some insurance companies, given what we saw unfold, particularly across the continent, and Liberty Holdings has assets across sub-Saharan Africa. I was quite taken aback by that number from First Rand Namibia, but as we all know, Namibia has been in recession. Private sector credit growth is at a record low. And therefore, I think the First Rand results are just reflecting the difficult situation on the ground in Windhoek and in Namibia.
Thanks a great deal, Ali. Also, we've got Liberty Holdings, the same company that is looking to acquire some stake in a company in Kenya. Here they are reporting a loss. I mean, how do we balance that?
Yeah, if you're reporting a loss in your home country, well, you look for money elsewhere. That's the whole reason of stepping out, of having footprints outside your home country. By the way, you remember a few years ago, as early as 3-4 years ago, Nigeria's Dangote Cement was making some good inroads into a number of frontier Africa countries where he's doing the cement business because of those investments he was making in dollar inflows and what have you, even though Nigeria remains a very large market for its cement, essentially because of the population and the infrastructure and the spending size of the country. But then Dangote Cement today is reaping from that Pan-African expansion. So Liberty Holdings will give it to the guys in East Africa and Southern Africa, that corridor within the COMESA, if you want to put it that way, whether it is banks, financial services, brokerage firms, financial advisory, and what have you. That corridor, they've been able to lock things down very well. So if it doesn't pay in one country, you see what you can make gains from the other.
Now let's move on to the Northern African space. You've got Egypt and the AfDB signing 2.06 billion Egyptian pounds to finance sanitization, specifically in the rural areas. You've got Delta for printing, approving 16.8 million Egyptian pounds in dividend for the 2020 financial year. Egyptians for investment for 73% year-on-year rise in profits. Morocco's This Way technology is also to pay some dividends, some 35 dirhams per share, and that's the highest since the IPO. We also have Hazem Hassoui, who is now the Chief Executive Officer of Italo-Tunisian Petroleum Exploration Company in the Northern African country. Boston, let me come to you with the Egypt and AfDB, that's African Development Bank, signing 2.06 billion Egyptian pounds agreement, and of course to tie that in with the AfDB's grant of $400 million to the Nigerian Securities and Exchange Commission. I mean, how do we square this up? So much funds coming out of the AfDB in recent time.
Oh, thank you. In relation to Nigeria's SEC, that was $400,000. As I said earlier, the AfDB wants to help everyone that is helpable within every help they can give every jurisdiction within the African space. And I think for the first time in 20, 25, 30 years in history, the AfDB is right in front of everybody's face, left, right, and center. Dr. Adesina has been very, very busy, extremely busy for his first time in office. He's now gotten the second term. He's in the second year of the first term. So it all looks very big, very busy. Sanitation is important for Egypt. If you look at Cairo, for example, putting the local currency in there, making sure you have the folks on the ground. Cairo is a big metropolis. I've been there just once, and I know that, yes, The city can use a whole lot more in terms of sanitation. They're building a new Cairo, by the way, which is just some miles, very nice highways, sweet-looking city, away where they have the new international conference center, and we had an international event there about 3 years ago. Very nice place. But I think AfDB is doing quite well, trying to help each. I think that's the whole essence of the AfDB, by the way. Make sure you help the authorities to get their bearings right, socio-economic development.
Specifically, again, the fact that all of these countries are actually shareholders in this institution as well. So the expectations are seemingly being met with all of these funds coming out of there. Ali, let's get your final thoughts on these headlines. I mean, how bullish are you about all of this funding coming from this multilateral development institution, and the fact that they've been looking at some countries? What do other countries then need to put in place to be able to attract the funding from all these financial institutions?
Well, I think, firstly, let's confirm that Egypt is like the poster child for a lot of these multilateral institutions. AfDB, EIB, you name it, they're all pumping money into Egypt. And I think that comes back to the story about them getting ahead of the curve, devaluing the currency, I think, in 2015. And creating a very enabling environment for domestic and international investors. And I think they've been rewarded for that. People have looked through the politics of LCC and looked at the economic story and feel that they can get behind that. Of course, there is volatility in that region, Temple, because as you probably know, CC was in Khartoum over the weekend. We've got the issue with the Ethiopian dam, and we've got a big build-up on the Sudan-Ethiopian border as we speak, with some folks talking about, it being a very big flashpoint potentially. But going back to the economic story, tremendous support for CC, for the administration in Egypt. It remains one of the most attractive destinations for international investors, and I don't see that changing. I think that we'll continue to see that story play out this year.
Appreciate your rich analysis, Ali Kansachu of Rich Frontiers in Nairobi, Kenya. Thank you for joining us on the show this morning. Bosun Amofaye, Executive Editor here at Frontier Africa Reports. Thanks a great deal for your insights as well. I'm Temple Ashaji. This has been our first edition of the show, Frontier Opening Bell this week. You'll have a lovely week ahead. Bye for now.